killing spree continues. Bikers, Chicky, we know everything. Everything you've been up to since you got it.
If you thought the chaos in Tulsa King had peaked, think again, because Season 3, Episode 6 looks like the moment everything detonates. The line between ally and enemy has officially evaporated, and Dwight's empire is cracking faster than his patience. Dunmire's tightening the noose, Muso's playing chess with blackmail, and every friend Dwight ever made suddenly smells opportunity in the smoke. This isn't business anymore. It's personal, paranoid, and ugly. The kind of power struggle where the bullets might be the least dangerous thing flying around. Because when the walls start closing in and the loyalty starts rotting, every empire becomes the same, desperate, brutal, and drenched in betrayal.
But there is only one son that I worship. And he was sacrificed in the name of the greater good too.
Dunmire's retaliation strategy, full-blown war or psychological siege. If Jeremiah Dunmire was the snake in the grass before, Episode 6 is where he starts coiling. His retaliation strategy isn't just about sending muscle, it's about sending a message. The kind that doesn't come with gunfire first, but pressure, paranoia, and silence. That's how old money plays the game. Dunmire isn't interested in blood for blood, he's interested in control. He knows Dwight's biggest weakness isn't his age or his enemies, it's his ego, and that's what he's about to weaponize. Expect Episode 6 to shift from chaos to calculation, with every move Dwight makes already countered 3 steps ahead by a man who doesn't need to swing to win.
You have a problem with anyone out there? I'm just a phone call away.
Sheridan's been setting this up like a chess match between 2 predators who don't even play the same sport. Dwight's still brawling in back rooms, breaking faces to solve problems. Dunmire's dropping contracts, bribes, and blackmail like landmines. We're watching a gangster from the street collide with a gangster from the boardroom, one fueled by instinct, the other by infrastructure. And honestly, Dunmire might already be winning. His war isn't fought with guns, it's fought with subpoenas, whispers, and high-end whiskey. By the time Dwight realizes he's in a psychological siege instead of a street war, it might already be too late. The brilliance and horror of Dunmire's play is how impersonal it is. He doesn't have to touch Dwight to destroy him, he just has to make the world around him crumble. His allies question him. His business partners pull out. The city starts treating him like the ticking time bomb he's become. It's the slow bleed, the kind that doesn't end with a firefight, but with a man forced to admit that power built on fear can't stand against power built on systems. If this episode delivers what the trailer teases, Dunmire isn't retaliating, he's already reclaiming Tulsa, piece by piece. Tyson's return, or breaking point, pawn, rebel, or fallen soldier. If Tyson does crawl back into the picture in Episode 6, it won't be as the same kid who drove Dwight around and soaked up gangster wisdom like a wide-eyed apprentice. That version of Tyson is dead, chewed up by the weight of loyalty, guilt, and the ugly reality of what family means in Dwight's world. What we might be seeing now is the aftermath of a young man who's realized he's been a pawn in a game that was never his to win. Whether he's missing, captured, or playing ghost, one thing's clear: Tyson's silence is louder than any gunshot this season. This could be the breaking point episode for him, the emotional shrapnel from Cole's death. The Bourbon fiasco and Dwight's unraveling empire has left him stranded between 2 lives: the street loyalty Dwight taught him and the self-preservation instinct that's finally kicking in. Sheridan loves his redemption arcs wrapped in tragedy, and Tyson fits that bill perfectly. If he returns, don't expect a tearful reunion. Expect resentment, trauma, and a man who's seen too much for his own age. He might not come back to help Dwight at all. He might come back to end it. Tyson's role now feels less like right-hand man and more like a walking consequence. His choices are proof that Dwight's mentorship is as poisonous as it is protective. Every favor Dwight ever called in, every promise of loyalty, now feels like a curse that Tyson's desperate to shake. So if Episode 6 dares to pull the trigger on his storyline, it won't be about whether he survives. It'll be about whether his return ignites the final spark that sends Dwight's whole empire into flames.
Tyson is not thinking right at that moment, so you leave him alone in that dive? Family doesn't do that.
Cleo and Bodhi's loyalty tested further. Who folds first? If Tulsa King has taught us anything, it's that loyalty is just another form of currency, and in Dwight's crumbling empire, the exchange rate's collapsing fast. Cleo and Bodhi, once Dwight's ride-or-die operators, are now staring down the kind of moral debt no amount of cash or charisma can cover. Episode 6 looks like it's teeing up the moment where one of them finally cracks, not out of malice, but survival instinct. Dwight's empire is bleeding and the vultures are circling. You can't blame them for wondering if it's smarter to save themselves than to sink with the ship. Cleo's loyalty has always come with conditions. She's loyal until the room starts to smell like danger, and right now the whole place reeks. She's savvy, sharp, and knows the streets run on leverage, not love. Then there's Bodhi, the digital age hustler who thought he could outsmart the mob by coding his way around it. The irony? He's trapped deeper than anyone. Every move he makes now risks exposure, and every secret he's holding could get him killed. Sheridan's setting them up like two dominoes wobbling in opposite directions. The question is, who tips first and who pushes? What makes this so juicy isn't just the betrayal, it's the why. Cleo might fold because she's tired of playing cleanup for Dwight's old-school blunders. Bodhi might fold because the feds, Dunmire, or Muso finally press the right digital button. Either way, when one of them caves, it'll send shockwaves through what's left of Dwight's family. And here's the kicker, Sheridan doesn't do clean betrayals. When loyalty dies in Tulsa King, it dies ugly, and it usually takes someone with it. Episode 6 might just be the moment Dwight learns that fear keeps people close until it doesn't.
Did we or did we not shake on a deal?
It was a bad deal, Jeremiah. For me and for my family.
The Bourbon deal's new fallout. Clients, contracts, and corpses. The Bourbon deal was supposed to be Dwight's classy way of laundering legitimacy into his empire, a toast to power dressed up in mahogany and glass. But as always in Tulsa King, every good business venture ends up drenched in blood and betrayal. Episode 6 is shaping up to show the hangover that comes after the high. And this time, the bourbon's gone sour. The investors are nervous, the contracts are shady, and the bodies? Well, they're starting to pile up like unpaid debts. What started as a slick business pivot is turning into a financial crime scene, and everyone with a stake in it is suddenly realizing that partnering with Dwight Manfredi means signing more than just a dotted line. It means signing your own risk assessment in blood. The most fascinating part here is how quickly the legitimate world starts to rot once it gets a whiff of Dwight's way of doing things. The clients who once saw a gold rush now see a red flag. Contracts meant to stabilize the operation are being weaponized as leverage. And somewhere behind the curtain, someone's moving chess pieces. Maybe Muso, maybe Dunmire, maybe even someone within Dwight's family. It's not just business turning ugly, it's business becoming personal. Because once corpses start turning up tied to corporate handshakes, nobody can tell where the business ends and the war begins. The Bourbon deal was Dwight's promise to himself that he could go straight without losing control. But Episode 6 feels like the moment that illusion finally shatters. The fallout isn't just financial, it's symbolic. Every bottle, every deal, every legit move Dwight tried to make becomes another reminder that no matter how much polish he puts on it, he's still running a criminal empire. The bourbon was meant to represent sophistication and rebirth, but now it's the drink at his own funeral. The real question isn't how many bodies it costs, it's how much of Dwight's soul goes with it. Muso's leverage play. Blackmail and legal traps unleashed. Muso's finally done playing the polite game. Episode 6 looks like the moment she drops the pretense and shows everyone what real power looks like when it's wrapped in legal documents instead of bullets. While Dwight and his crew are still trying to navigate the chaos on the streets, Muso's making her moves in the shadows, pulling strings with lawyers, city officials, and backdoor deals. This isn't about brute force anymore. It's about precision. She's cornering Dwight not with guns, but with subpoenas, audits, and whispers in the right ears. The kind of warfare that doesn't spill blood, it spills secrets. And here's where it gets deliciously dangerous. Muso knows exactly how to weaponize Dwight's weaknesses. His family, his past, his so-called legitimate businesses. Everything he's tried to keep clean, she's about to drag through the mud and hang out for the vultures to see. This isn't just revenge, it's strategy. She's setting traps he can't shoot his way out of, the kind that bleed him publicly, force him to play defense, and pit his own people against him. When Muso starts dealing in blackmail and legality, it's like watching someone swap a knife for a scalpel. Less mess, more precision, and far more painful. If this is where the episode's heading, we might be watching Dwight's biggest vulnerability finally get exploited, not his enemy's muscle, but their patience. Muso's playing the long game, waiting for him to crack under pressure, for his empire to implode from within. She's not just out for control anymore, she's out to erase his credibility, his alliances, and maybe even his name. Dwight survived shootouts and betrayals, but can he survive being strangled by the system itself? Because if Muso gets her way, the next hitman coming for Dwight might not carry a gun, just a briefcase. Family warfare. Tina becomes a target or a weapon. If there's one rule in Dwight's world, it's that family is both shield and shrapnel. And in episode 6, it looks like Tina's about to find herself right in the middle of that crossfire, not as collateral damage, but as the weapon everyone wants to use. The streets may be bloody, but the real war is moving into the living rooms, courtrooms, and front yards. Dwight's enemies have figured out something brutal. You don't take down the king by shooting at him, you go after the queen. And that's exactly what's happening here. Tina's life, her business, and even her name are turning into leverage pieces in a game she never wanted to play. But here's the irony. Tina might not be as defenseless as everyone assumes. After everything she's endured, her father's criminal shadow, the chaos he brings into her life, and the emotional toll that comes with being a McCluskey-level moral anchor, she's hardened up. This could be the moment where she flips the narrative, uses her father's playbook, and fights fire with fury. Maybe she's not the pawn anymore. Maybe she's the queen finally realizing her power on the board. Whether that means cutting deals behind Dwight's back or luring Muso into a trap of her own, this storyline feels like it's gearing up to turn Tina from a daughter into a force. And if this episode delivers on that promise, we're about to see the most personal kind of war. The kind where Dwight's biggest strength becomes his ultimate liability. Because family isn't just his reason to fight, it's the rope his enemies will use to pull him under. The question isn't whether Tina survives this, it's whether she chooses his side when the smoke clears. And if she doesn't, Dwight might finally learn the one thing he's refused to believe: sometimes blood isn't thicker than ambition. New rivals step out. Secondary players rise in the vacuum. When the big dogs start tearing each other apart, it's always the quiet ones in the corner who make their move, and Tulsa King Season 3. Episode 6 looks like the exact moment those secondary players start sniffing power. With Dwight stretched thin between Dunmire's counterattacks, Muso's shadow games, and the emotional warfare brewing at home, the cracks are showing, and in that vacuum, the opportunists step out of the dark. The side hustlers, the lieutenants, the overlooked, all ready to flip allegiances if it means climbing one rung higher. It's the jungle law of Tulsa. When the lion's distracted, the scavengers circle. And honestly, this might be where the show gets nasty. We're talking about low-level gang enforcers suddenly running corners, dirty cops realizing they can profit off the chaos, and even Dwight's supposed allies, the Cleos, the Bodhis, the club owners, quietly picking sides that benefit them, not the family. Every empire eventually rots from the inside, and this feels like that turning point. The people who once feared Dwight's wrath might start asking the one question that kills all loyalty: what's he really gonna do about it? But here's the dark twist. These secondary players could become the real threat, the kind that doesn't need a crown to burn down the kingdom. When Dwight finally looks up from the battlefield, he might realize the war he's fighting isn't even the one that matters anymore. The old order's collapsing, and the replacements aren't businessmen or mobsters, they're survivors. Cold, ambitious, and tired of waiting their turn. The real question for Episode 6? Can Dwight stamp out a dozen smaller fires, or will one of them finally light the match that ends it all?
Take care of the threat when we know who we're fighting.
So let's get to know him. What the?
I'm gonna do to
All right, let's not sugarcoat it. Tulsa King just threw gasoline on the fire, and Episode 4's trailer makes it clear. This isn't business as usual. This is war disguised as business. We're talking feds pulling puppet strings, Dunmires trying to bleed Dwight dry, and the whole empire shaking like it's one bad call away from collapse. And yet, Dwight's still strutting like the old-school cowboy in a boardroom full of sharks. But here's the kicker. Swagger doesn't stop subpoenas, and loyalty doesn't always survive a squeeze. If you thought this show was just about mobsters and muscle, you're not paying attention. It's about power and the people who will burn the whole city down just to prove they own the ashes.
Yeah, we'll get him.
Accept the signs you've been given. You know what comes if you don't.
Dunmire War escalates. Is Dwight already losing ground? The Dunmire War isn't just escalating, it's swallowing Dwight whole, piece by piece, while he still walks around pretending he's the one holding the cards. Episode 4's trailer makes it painfully clear that the Dunmires don't play catch-up. They play domination. This is generational wealth versus street hustle, and Dwight's swagger looks more like a band-aid than a battle plan. For all his old-school bravado, Dwight's empire is cracking faster than he can patch it, and the Dunmires know exactly where to push. His people, his business, and his pride. And that's the real sting. Dwight doesn't even see it coming. He's still busy flexing on his crew, threatening rivals, and making promises he can't cash, while the Dunmires are quietly strangling him with power he can't touch. The trailer hints at Tyson's fate dangling like bait on a hook, and Jeremiah Dunmire setting the tone for a long, brutal war Dwight isn't equipped to fight. The street soldier in him wants blood, but the businessman in him knows this isn't a gunfight. It's a chess match where his opponents bought the board and hired the referees. So the question isn't just whether Dwight's losing ground, it's whether he ever had ground to stand on in the first place. The Dunmires don't just own the battlefield, they built the damn city around it. Every move Dwight makes feels like running uphill in concrete boots, and Episode 4 looks ready to confirm the worst. The King of Tulsa might already be a pawn in someone else's Dynasty game.
We want to take out the competition.
Tyson's fate, kidnapped or sacrificed. Tyson's fate is the ticking time bomb at the heart of this season, and the Episode 4 trailer doesn't shy away from dangling it in our faces. If the Dunmires really have him, it's not just a kidnapping, it's a declaration of war, one that slices straight through Dwight's carefully built empire. Tyson isn't just muscle, he's loyalty made flesh, the one guy who's been with Dwight from jump. Taking him is personal, surgical, and meant to remind Dwight that his enemies don't just want his business, they want his soul. But here's the ugly truth. Kidnapping might not be the worst case scenario. A hostage can be leveraged, traded, maybe even saved. A dead Tyson, however, that's permanent, and it would shred Dwight's already shaky morale while sending shockwaves through his fractured crew. The Dunmires know it, Dwight knows it, and the Episode 4 trailer leans hard into that uncomfortable what if, the possibility that Tyson's loyalty ends up being the rope that hangs him. So is Tyson kidnapped, sacrificed, or something far worse? Either way, the message is the same. Dwight's empire is bleeding, and the Dunmires aren't afraid to cut deep where it hurts most. If Dwight can't protect the one guy who never betrayed him, what hope does he have of keeping anyone else safe? Episode 4 might finally prove that the cost of this war isn't territory or business, it's people. Russell Lee Washington Jr.'s entrance. Samuel L. Jackson game changer? If Tulsa King wanted to drop a grenade into the middle of this war, they just pulled the pin with Russell Lee Washington Jr. And let's be real, you don't cast Samuel L. Jackson to play second fiddle. His entrance is teased in the Episode 4 trailer like a looming thunderstorm, the kind that doesn't just pass by, it levels the whole damn block. Up until now, the Dunmire War has been a chess game between Dwight and Jeremiah, but Russell's arrival feels like a third player flipping the table over entirely. What makes his presence so dangerous is ambiguity. Is Russell an ally, a rival, or something far worse, an opportunist circling both Dwight and the Dunmires like a shark smelling blood? The trailer hints at swagger, menace, and the kind of unpredictability that throws everyone else off their axis. If Dwight thought Jeremiah was a nightmare, imagine tossing Samuel L. Jackson into the mix with his signature authority, venom, and charisma. Suddenly, this isn't just about old money versus old muscle, it's about who can actually control the chaos once Russell steps onto the board. And let's not kid ourselves. His role could be the single factor that saves Tulsa King from slipping into predictability. Russell Lee Washington Jr. isn't a background character. He's the wild card that makes both Dwight and Jeremiah sweat. Episode 4 looks ready to confirm what we've all suspected. When Jackson shows up, everyone else better shut up because the real game changer has finally arrived.
Does not leave family behind. This could be the greatest opportunity of my life, and it comes with danger.
Jeremiah Dunmire's next move, squeeze or strike. Jeremiah Dunmire isn't playing the reckless street-level game Dwight is used to. He's the type of old money shark who knows you don't need to swing fists when you own the water everyone's drowning in. The Episode 4 trailer hints that Jeremiah is done watching and ready to act, but the real question is how? Does he go for the slow suffocation, cutting Dwight off from every connection, every safe haven, every dime until he caves? Or does he opt for the blunt force trauma of an all-out strike, letting blood flow in the streets to remind Tulsa exactly who runs it? What makes Jeremiah terrifying is that both moves are on the table. The squeeze keeps Dwight flailing in quicksand, watching his empire crumble with no single point of attack to retaliate against. The strike, on the other hand, risks chaos, but chaos that Jeremiah can control while Dwight burns himself out just trying to survive. The trailer teases this crossroads perfectly, giving us flashes of tension that suggest Jeremiah isn't just escalating the war, he's about to dictate its terms. And here's the brutal irony. Dwight's not built to handle either. He's a bruiser in a war of kings, and Jeremiah's next move could expose just how outclassed he really is. Episode 4 looks like the moment where Jeremiah decides if Dwight's empire dies a slow, humiliating death or goes up in flames overnight. Either way, the Dunmire dynasty wins, and Dwight looks more like a pawn being toyed with than the king he pretends to be. Dwight's empire on shaky ground. Dwight's so-called empire is starting to look less like a fortress and more like a house of cards built on quicksand. The Episode 4 trailer drops enough hints to make one thing clear. The cracks aren't just visible, they're spreading. The crew that was once glued together by loyalty is showing signs of fracture, his allies are questioning whether following Dwight is worth the body count, and the feds are circling like vultures waiting for the collapse. If Season 1 was about building something new, Season 3 feels like the painful reminder that Dwight might have built it on rotten foundations. The irony here is brutal. Dwight survived prison, rival gangs, and New York's power plays, only to be undone by his own team, and the sheer weight of enemies he underestimated. The Episode 4 trailer doesn't just tease action, it teases erosion. Every promise Dwight made, every illusion of control is slipping through his hands. And when a king loses faith from within, the throne doesn't just wobble, it topples. So is Dwight's empire already crumbling, or are we watching the long, drawn-out demolition of a man who thought loyalty could be bought with favors and fear? The trailer is painting a picture that fans can't ignore. The Tulsa King might be about to learn the ugliest truth of all, that the crown was never really his to wear. Family as leverage. Is Dwight's past becoming his his weak spot? For all Dwight's swagger about being untouchable, the trailer for episode 4 makes one thing brutally obvious. His family is the crack in the armor everyone's aiming at. Dwight can outmuscle street thugs, he can outmaneuver small-time hustlers, but when it comes to blood ties, he's soft. Always has been. The Dunmires, the feds, even Muso, they've figured out Achilles' heel. And the cruel beauty of it is that family doesn't just weaken Dwight, it forces him to make stupid moves, the kind that turns strategy into desperation. It's not hard to see the setup. Episode 4 looks like it's pushing the idea that Dwight's past, his estranged daughter, his fractured relationships, even the surrogate family he's cobbled together in Tulsa is no longer ballast. It's bait. The war with Jeremiah isn't going to be won by gunfire in the streets. It's going to be fought in Dwight's heart and his head. Can he protect his people without sacrificing his empire? Or worse, will he sacrifice the empire just to keep what little family he has left intact? And here's the kicker. For a man who once ruled with fear and power, nothing makes him look weaker than fighting for family in a world that doesn't care about it. Episode 4's trailer teases this perfectly. It's not just Dwight versus the Dunmires, it's Dwight versus himself. And if the show has the guts to lean into that, we might be watching a king dethroned not by bullets, but by love. Bloodshed on the horizon? The episode 4 trailer doesn't whisper about violence, it all but guarantees it. The Dunmire War isn't some cold backroom chess match anymore. It's barreling toward open conflict, and Dwight is standing right in the middle like a man who hasn't realized the avalanche already started. Every shot of the trailer drips with tension, suggesting that negotiations are done, threats are meaningless, and the only language left to speak is blood. And if you think Dwight's crew is ready for that kind of fight, the trailer hints otherwise. They're rattled, fractured, and one bad move away from scattering when the real bullets start flying. But this isn't just about random carnage. The Dunmires are old money with old grudges, and their kind of violence doesn't leave bodies in alleys, it leaves messages carved into history. Episode 4 looks like the turning point where the gloves come off, and Dwight's enemies stop trying to suffocate him slowly, and instead decide to put him down hard. The trailer teases faces of fear, looming confrontations, and enough loaded guns to remind us why Sheridan's world is never content with quiet scheming. It has to end in spilled blood. And here's the brutal truth. Dwight doesn't have the numbers, the resources, or the leverage to win a war like this. He's a street soldier wading into a dynasty conflict, and when blood finally hits the pavement, it won't just be his enemies paying the price. Episode 4 looks ready to answer the question no fan wants to ask. Is Dwight leading his people into battle or leading them straight into the slaughterhouse? Old school Dwight versus the Dunmire dynasty's old money power. Dwight's entire brand is old school, knuckles, loyalty, intimidation, and that prison-hardened instinct to never back down. But the episode 4 trailer sets him against something far deadlier than rival muscle. The Dunmire dynasty, a family that's been buying politicians, owning judges, and stacking generational power long before Dwight ever lit his first cigar. This isn't just a mob war, it's a culture clash between blunt force street smarts and the suffocating grip of old money. And the uncomfortable truth is that Dwight's way of doing things looks prehistoric against an empire that doesn't need to pull triggers when it can pull strings. The Dunmires don't threaten Dwight by beating his crew bloody in the streets, they destroy him by cutting off his oxygen supply. They can shut down his businesses with one phone call, disappear allies with one favor, and bleed him out financially without ever firing a shot. Dwight, meanwhile, is still swinging like it's 1985, thinking one big move will scare them into submission. The trailer teases just how laughably outmatched he might be, like a street brawler stepping into a war room full of generals who already planned his funeral. That's the genius of this brewing feud. It's not a question of who's tougher, it's a question of who actually understands the battlefield. Dwight wants to win through grit and loyalty, but the Dunmires already own the ground he's standing on. Episode 4 looks set to expose whether Dwight can evolve, or if this war proves that old-school muscle can't compete with dynasty power that's been stacking chips for decades. Theo's death fallout still haunting Dwight? Theo's death may feel like old business, but the episode 4 trailer makes it clear that the fallout is far from buried. For Dwight, it's not just about another body in the ground, it's about the ghost that refuses to leave the room. Theo wasn't just a casualty, he was a statement, and that statement keeps echoing, shaking Dwight's already shaky foundations, and because every power player left in Tulsa knows what Theo's ruin really means. Dwight doesn't just make enemies, he leaves collateral damage behind him. The blood may be dry, but the stain is permanent. The real weight of Theo's death isn't guilt in a moral sense, it's leverage. The feds will exploit it, the Dunmires will weaponize it, and Dwight's own crew will see it as proof that loyalty to him is a death sentence waiting to happen. The episode 4 trailer teases the cracks this has left wide open, distrust festering inside the crew, enemies circling with new confidence, and Dwight himself rattled in a way we haven't seen since season 1. Theo's ruin wasn't just a loss, it was a crack in the armor that everyone else is now clawing at. And that's the most haunting part. Dwight doesn't have time to mourn, but the guilt seeps into his decisions anyway. Every move he makes looks clouded by that ghost, by the reminder that one wrong step doesn't just cost him, it cost everyone who dares to stand next to him. Episode 4 seems ready to prove that Theo's death isn't a footnote in the story, it's the wound that won't close, and it might be the very thing that finally drags Dwight down for good. The Fed's real endgame revealed? The Feds circling Dwight isn't news, that's been a constant hum in the background since season 1. But episode 4's trailer hints at something different, something nastier. This isn't about catching a mobster anymore, it's about dismantling the entire mythos Dwight represents. The FBI isn't chasing one man, they're going after the empire, the culture, the legend of a guy who refuses to die in the dirt. They don't just want Dwight behind bars, they want him erased, discredited, and rendered powerless. And that's the sinister brilliance of their endgame. Forget bullets and busts, they're starving Dwight slowly, making every legitimate move look dirty, every loyal ally look compromised, and every new venture look like a setup. If episode 4's hints are real, the feds aren't playing fair, they're playing forever. The Dunmires might squeeze, but the FBI strangles. That kind of pressure doesn't just force bad decisions, it makes Dwight bleed in ways he can't patch up with muscle or money. But here's the kicker. When law enforcement stops chasing justice and starts building a trophy case, the rules change. Dwight isn't just fighting criminals anymore, he's fighting an entire system that doesn't want him punished, it wants him extinct. That's the kind of war you don't win in the street. It's the kind of war that drags your soul into the courtroom, the headlines, and the history books. And if the feds really are revealing their hand in episode 4, Dwight might already be too deep in the trap to claw his way back out. So here's where I land. If this trailer's telling us anything, it's that Dwight isn't climbing the ladder anymore. He's dangling from it, while the feds and the Dunmires are shaking it loose. And honestly, maybe that's the brilliance of season 3. This isn't just Dwight versus one rival. It's Dwight versus everyone. New money, old mob, the government, even the ghost of his own family. It's messy, it's brutal, and it's exactly what this show needed to remind people it can still punch harder than half the cookie-cutter crime dramas out there. But let's not kid ourselves. Someone's blood is about to buy the next round of business, and if the trailer's right, Dwight may not be holding the knife this time.